meeting is open. Anyone can.
Recording is on.
Even late. Thank you. And welcome everyone to the WAX OIG round. Oh, yeah, screen share. Forgot my screen share. Welcome everyone to the WAX OIG Roundtable number 7. Today is October 10th, and we have a short agenda, but a huge change. So we're proposing guidelines 5.3 today. Also, we're giving a short update on the last evaluation, and we are having a look at the network health. So as of the last tech evaluation, we have some positions updated in our guild roster. The guild roster now is composed of, has 4 guilds failing the minimum requirements. So we are at 32 producing guilds at the moment. The threshold for standby has moved to 180, down slightly from around 198, I believe. And with this tech evaluation, we also increased the threshold for the score to 125 for standbys. But we can see that there are some issues on the tech ops side for 4 guilds, so they didn't make the minimum requirements the last month. Looking also at the network health, CPU benchmark looks completely fine. We will get into a proposed change from our side to the CPU benchmark later when we are visiting the guidelines. And also in the past 30 days, we didn't have many rounds missed by guilds. Still 2 rounds is enough for a full score on the round availability. And we have only 1 guild not making the full points in this category in the ratings, with 4 rounds missed and 99.97. The threshold is 99.99.
That's 10 minutes. Right?
Yeah, that's 10 minutes. Technically, you will lose 1 round when your backup kicks in, or when you experience network issues, which happened for Eosphere, I believe, last week. Yeah, but putting that into context, it's 10 minutes exactly. Also, looking at the network, we noticed that there were double producing guilds in the last 30 days, unfortunately. Nifty Blocks Guild and Ledgerwise had double produce incidents, which cost them some points in forms of penalty. Overall, we can see that the situation normalized over the last 30 days with low transactions. And the block time seems fairly stable, and we don't see anymore so many empty blocks per round. Still a few issues, but overall much better compared to the 30 days before.
Did you change anything, Anders?
We have changed a lot of things, of course.
Did you put your finger on what was the reason?
Yes, and from my head right now, I don't recall exactly. There was one configuration thing that was one of the issues, but we also got an entirely new node, and with the change of the config and a new node, there's no issues anymore. But the config was very important as well.
Nice. So overall, looking good for now. Situation improved. Nice. Let's get into the next topic on our agenda, which is the main topic for today's call. We are proposing the guidelines version 53 to you. And it includes a lot of changes. So let's walk through the major changes and some minor changes, because we changed the wording in a lot of situations. So the major changes in 5.3 are that we require a minimum atomic assets API version of 1.3.21. The version is linked in the repository. It is the latest update, the latest release from Atomic Assets API from August 7. So make sure to get your Atomic Assets APIs up to date to receive a score in the next evaluation. So this is for 5.3, so it's not urgent that you update, but you should have it done by the end of the month. Then last week we had an incident in the network. 2 weeks ago we had a network-wide incident with Hyperion, and it was due to a very large transaction which could not be processed by the message queue. So there was a hotfix which was out there pretty fast, and all of you made sure to update your Hyperion node in time. But we don't want this to happen too often, and we don't want your scores to suffer from it. So we are introducing something like a grace period for incidents, where we look at such incidents that impact all of the guilds and essentially just add some percentage to your uptime. Generously, we apply also a bonus for time zones and the workload involved. A percentage to your uptime to increase your score in case you wouldn't make the threshold for the points because of the incident. We will get into the details because we have written a whole paragraph about the grace period, and also what we defined as an SLR, which is similar to an SLA, but since we don't have an agreement, we named it SLR, which means a service layer requirement. Next on the major changes, the Delphi Oracle uptime is introduced now because we didn't have that written in the guidelines before. Delphi Oracle uptime is now required to be 95% to receive a full score in this category. So previously we were looking at the pairs and we expected a huge uptime, a large uptime, but in some cases when price feeds didn't work, we were generous with the points in this category, and now we are fixing it at 95%. So make sure your price oracle is properly monitored and has the required uptime throughout the month, throughout the evaluation period to receive the points. And also, we are moving on with the requirements for Hyperion. So we require version 3.3.5. We've seen much older versions of Hyperion in the network during our evaluations. So we want to push the API nodes to the latest versions. Some of you are running 3.3.9 already. 3.3.5 should be fine. We will certainly increase the version requirements when we move to WAX version 4.04 network-wide.
I'd say that should be higher, to be honest, but 3.3.5 is still super old, missing a whole lot of features, much less bug fixes.
Yeah, but there's one thing with relation to upgrading Hyperions. We have direct dependency on clients, which are used for actually doing this history query and streaming. And currently in some of our components that we use Hyperion for, we determined that we are not compatible with versions which are further than 3.3.6. So we had to backport the updates which went to hotfix 3.3.9 to our 3.3.6 in order to be able to be backward and forward compatible with the clients. So it's not that simple.
So for clarification, and I saw the message by Igor, the streaming on Hyperion hasn't been updated for a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what
Yeah.
we refer to.
That's not a problem. I mean that we prefer to stick to older version right now just for the sake of backward compatibility because we use it.
I mean, that may be good for your application, but I mean, for public infrastructure and
not
expectation.
True. That is not true because many people still use older clients for streaming. And for public, it's better because we provide a wider kind of compatibility with everyone. There is basically nothing breaking which can be in 339 and nothing that it provides in terms of pros and cons because we don't, in terms of functionality which is provided in newer versions, they can be, either moved to some dedicated 339, but I am not sure there are use cases which require you to upgrade to 339. And when you can't use older version such as 336 or 335. So for example, in case of our Hyperion, which is 336, it's better for us and most of our users. Instead of migrating to 339, which cuts off all clients and basically, cuts off a huge amount of traffic. Specifically.
But now you're presenting a completely different experience across the different public nodes.
That's not completely different. That's the point. There is.
You're saying you can't go to the latest version because it breaks something. So there's obviously something that's different.
Yes, it breaks something.
There's also a lot of hot fixes that fix null duplicated results in transactions. I mean, there were a lot of fixes that came in through all of those fixes. That was like on the API and stuff.
No, I see no use cases for that because we don't have problems with those hot
Maybe
fixes.
I'm the only one that has that opinion. Does anybody else feel that anybody that's familiar with Hyperion, feel that offering 335 as a minimum, knowing everybody's running 339, 7, 8, because it's got all the bug fixes.
Yeah, I'm just trying to raise this question. Do we really have to raise the bar for the which requires actually cutting off some traffic and some users and requires those users to upgrade and invest some time to just upgrade their clients and compatibility just because we decided that 339 has better, in some terms, functionality. Why do exactly we have to upgrade to 339?
Eventually, we did have to push out Windows 95 too. I mean, and everybody had to upgrade off of it. I get what you're saying. I just don't.
You see that there's a slight contradiction here. While our users and we in specific can use 3.1 branch and 3.5 branch for streaming, we can't use 339 for streaming. That's the point. Older versions.
That's your situation. That doesn't mean that the rest of the world needs to stay on Windows 95 because.
Yeah, I agree, but rest of the world will have their objections in case if we, for example, force Windows 95 deprecation while they have still a lot of stuff working on Windows 95. I mean, if you understand my analogy.
I completely understand what you're saying. I'll leave it open. What is everybody else's opinion?
Yeah, well, I agree. I'm just asking a question. Why do we need to upgrade actually expectations for the 339? What benefits it provides in comparison to 336, for example, which are enforced to be used by public or clients of WATS.
All of those bug fixes that he's scrolling through right there, and I remember a lot of them. They were duplicated responses.
In which situations those hot fixes are actually practically used? I mean this. Do you have use cases or only backlog and actually the release log?
All of those fixes were because of use cases. I mean, you've been in the Hyperion channel. Somebody has
okay, we need to just move on a little bit here. I think the thing is here, the clients that use these Hyperions, they get to choose the Hyperion they want. It's not like they all went behind some global load balancer and they're getting a mixed experience. They would have chosen which ones they want. I get where you're coming from, Michael.
I disagree. You know, people load balance that. You don't pick one node. You pick multiple nodes and round robin in between them. That's what.
But yeah, well,
it doesn't Wharf do that automatically for you now.
Yeah, okay. Maybe
round robin.
That's what include null was always saying.
Michael,
the experience is not consistent.
You can round robin if you try to stream to actually get the stream from Hyperion. You will round robin until there is no compatible Hyperion.
I'm talking about problems that came with the API.
What would you say? Like, if you had to choose a version, Michael, what would you choose?
I mean, I would go with the latest version because at least
there could be, okay.
All of the fixes, they didn't come out just because they were feature fixes. You know the way Igor works. I mean, somebody came in, we troubleshot it and said, shit, there is a bug. And I mean, these were like bugs in the responses because people would query 3 nodes and get 5 different responses.
But isn't that the reason because the health checks are not complete?
In 335, you don't even have half of the health checks in there anymore. You don't have all those extra health responses.
You exactly have those extra checks in 336. That's my point.
Not 335. That's why I look at it and I say 335 is not a good one.
I mean, 336 is still compatible with older clients. That's my point. I mean, 336 is kind of a golden middle ground for everyone. So basically, you have compatibility with older clients and newer clients. So basically,
we definitely have different opinions. I'll leave it at that.
Michael, if, for example, you build your own application and you use Hyperion 339, if you migrate from 339 in terms of client usage to 336, you won't break anything. But if you migrate from 335 to 339, everything will stop working. That's the point.
Any other concern beside the streaming on the client side not working?
Well, that's my main concern. We just stopped being compatible with current working applications. I think that's huge.
Why would that be? Because, I mean, WebSocket is like a very standardized way of
that
education.
Requires, first of all, that requires for you to actually have those people who can work on upgrading your application stack, which interacts. So imposing this requirement, you basically...
Yeah, what I'm asking for exactly is, so streaming is like not much of implementation, if you want so.
Yeah, I think it's not all that is in that release log, because I'm not sure why 336 is still compatible, but I just did that by heuristic analysis. I upgraded each specific version and tried.
Can you name some of those breaking changes?
The 365.
I cannot
guys.
From the newer version.
Okay, one after another. So, Dimi.
He left.
He left?
He did.
Okay, then Ben.
No, I was just asking for specific examples of those changes that from 339 to 335 would not work anymore.
I would be glad to have that time to analyze all of the changes from 339 to 336, but all I did is upgrade each version. I tried each version from 3.3.5 to 3.3.9, and I stopped on 3.3.6 because it was still working. 3.3.7 doesn't work.
Okay, so
that's the point. I'm not sure.
I can tell you why, and I don't think that's a very a thing to consider here. But the streaming endpoint change. That's it. And if that's part of a change to the client side, I think anyone can afford that path to change.
Yeah, I agree. But my point only in providing service for the users. If we stop providing that, users might just exit Wax.
Okay.
Not that global. I mean that.
So from my understanding,
stop using that.
Yeah, but from understanding, the streaming still works. We need to confirm that.
Yes.
If only the endpoint changed, could we not add an Nginx mapping towards that endpoint? If somebody calls the old endpoint, we map to the new one?
Probably we can also try to talk to Igor and re-enable the socket.io endpoint. I don't see why it shouldn't be available through two endpoints. But yeah, I think that's not much to consider when you can see in the changelog that there have been many more important changes.
I mean, you could literally check the clients that are still calling that old endpoint and I don't know, just build something for them, right?
Yes.
I mean, that sounds easier than just keeping an old version just for that sake.
This is basically a situation where I have zero issues with, personally me, I have zero issues with upgrading to the latest version. I can upgrade and roll back, that's not a problem for me. I mean that, some of the users will stop using it and probably they will decide, what the fuck am I doing here? if they keep breaking it and I have to do some extra work for my client, I have to read the Hyperion log as a user, and that's extra work which has to be paid by someone, and that doesn't sound to me that providing additional fixes and hot fixes to some of the functionality has better preference than actually preserving some part of compatibility with older clients.
So yeah, but it's concerning that it's unknown how much streaming is really used, and we can't identify how many which applications are using it. So,
but we also do not have the number on the users who will prefer to use 3.3.9, right?
I guess
other statistics on both.
I guess most, so circling back to expectations, and I think I share the view of consistency. You would expect that every Hyperion is running on the same version. If your application depends on a certain Hyperion version, it's time to update your application, honestly.
Point taken. I will not kind of try to maybe
so initially we
lower the bar for the version. For me, it's easier just to spin up a separate Hyperion endpoint for my specific use case. But in terms of other clients, if it's decided in broad, if it's decided broadly to upgrade everything to 3.3.9, I'm fine with that. I was just trying to prove my point that it's not that critical, and maybe we still can keep older versions as a minimum requirement.
I don't think that's a good reason to keep old versions, but if it's literally just that one endpoint is not reachable. I mean, I get your point. We cannot just upgrade Hyperions and we have clients and then suddenly all the clients that use that endpoint break. So I would maybe suggest that we get this endpoint brought back. I think this is the best solution if that's the only thing.
Sure.
If there are a lot of people that still run the old version and if we can get maybe a fix for that, just to have an additional endpoint.
Yeah. As I said, I'm fine with any decision which will be accepted here.
Okay, so initially we had 339 in there as a requirement, and then we had in mind some concerns that you guys shared with us on last call, and we're probably going to bump it to 339 until we release those guidelines. So need to check with my IG colleagues on that, but we will surely have this discussion again in 2 weeks about the exact version we are going to require. But as of for now, we plan to bump the required version to something much newer than what we are seeing in the network, and we are seeing versions older than 335.
Yep, makes sense. So just to be clear, the submission that we're putting in now for the start of the next period, that is still going to be 335.
That is still going to be 335, yes.
Okay, cool. All right. I didn't know that we were actually going to start talking, so I'd like to just bring something up about the Delphi Oracle feed quickly.
Let's go.
If I can. So it needs to be 95% uptime. So I'm sure everybody here knows if you unregister your BP for maintenance, etc., your Delphi Oracle won't work, right? It won't allow you to actually submit any price feeds because you're not a valid BP. So if we set it at hard 95, that means that you won't be able to even do a scheduled downtime for whatever reason.
That's a good point. I think we didn't consider this yet. But thanks for the feedback on this. I'm taking notes in parallel. No, that's good.
Kind of ties your hands. Yeah. Okay, cool.
It's not only that, we also have the issue that only the top 30 BPs are allowed. So that's why we tell people to also push to testnet. So you can't keep pushing to testnet while you unregister on mainnet.
Okay. All right. So
I just want to add, but in case, that actually should work. It has to be in some notification. I would say that everyone knows that you do maintenance, and probably that's the only point that has to be probably added to the guideline, that you have to just put notification into WAX governance channel that you are doing maintenance, and there will be some gap in your Oracle.
So that leads us to probably the big paragraph about SLR definition we have at the bottom of the technical operations section. So somewhere in here, we want you to include your incidents or your maintenance periods inside your report, so that we know that you have been working on some stuff, and we can subtract this downtime from your actual uptime. So whenever you plan to have maintenance, you should always tell us inside your report. That's also part of our definition.
So what we had in the past and will keep having is that planned downtimes need to be announced to us in advance, so we can specify what is a planned downtime for maintenance that is required and what is an actual downtime.
Makes sense.
Okay. If like the power goes off in our data center, hypothetical.
Yeah.
And it's okay. I know that all my shit is broken, but I managed to unregister from the network. I didn't plan the power to go off. It's down. I've notified everybody, but it's going to take like 2 days to come back on again. Yeah, I've unregistered. I'm not doing anything particularly wrong, but you know, I'm not going to be able to feed oracles or anything like that. That would mean the fact that I have notified everybody and it has now become the sort of forced downtime. Would that qualify for exception?
Kiffer?
Right now, no, it doesn't, because that's not a planned mandatory downtime. It's an incident where you're supposed to have fallback solutions. So that's what we are penalizing right now. So we could consider coming up with a rule where if there is a downtime and you then announce the downtime once it happens and tell us why it's happening and for how long it's going to happen, that we might be able to make exceptions there. What we want to ensure is that downtimes and systems are maintained, and that's the problem we see mostly, that people just don't realize their shit gets even down because they don't monitor properly. So that's something that's not currently in the guidelines, but something that we could consider.
I suppose, you know, as far as APIs and stuff, we've got like heaps of ways to fall that stuff back onto different places. It's not always easy if you're having a block production problem, like what happened with us. And then, you know, you can't feed the price feed when you're unregistered, even doing right by the network. And if it wasn't planned for, you know, I'd ask that you could at least see that the teams are proactive. I mean, hell, if I lost both my primary and my secondary block production servers, and let me tell you, that shit can happen. Even when I unregister, it takes 5 rounds before it actually even registers on chain. So I could literally sit there and within the first second, I could actually unregister us and say, hey, there's a problem here. It's still going to take 5 rounds. So it's almost like you can be as proactive as you want to be. And I understand what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure that people keep their shit together and they know. But the chain itself, for any of these changes, it even takes 5 rounds. You know, and then you say, now, if we had to like really experiment with some failover, that is a penalty for double block production. You know, most of the time, all of us sort of professional guilds, the shit runs fine. We know what we're doing. We have everything backed up and set. But sometimes everything falls apart, and you got to do what you got to do to extract yourself from that broken link in the chain. But it seems like the requirements are so focused and so pointed now that even when you're doing right, it's actually impossible for you to actually meet the minimum requirement.
I have a question on top of that.
It could come to that.
We got
What's
this
the
debate.
purpose?
The purpose of the percentage uptime?
No, of the calling mom and dad that you are having an issue when you're solving things.
The purpose is pretty simple and straightforward. You can always say, yeah, it just took us 2 or 3 days to fix the shit while it was just sitting there unmonitored for 2 days. That is the reason why you have to call us, because we need to ensure that stuff is evaluated properly. And we can only evaluate what we see and what we know.
So asking the other way around, should API and Delphi Oracle and such uptime be coupled to actually your registered time?
You mean being uptime of your API being tied to whether you're actively registered or not?
Yeah.
No, I mean
Different services.
Yeah, I mean they're technically completely kind of separate. The only thing is if people were automatically scraping the chain for active BP endpoints, you wouldn't be showing up. But I would say for the most part, people don't forget about your API as soon as you unregister. Ross, would you agree with that? They kept smashing your shit.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, they do not forget.
I mean, they may be like us. I mean, if my BP's down, pretty good chance my API is probably having problems too. But that doesn't mean that, you know, that's because of how we're set up.
I'm just speaking from an experience that we happened last month. We literally had 2 broken BP servers, And it became scary for me to turn the server back on because I didn't think it was a hardware failure, you know? And it would run and everything looked fine, and then it would fail again. And even though I'm super, super proactive and I'm missing a few rounds each time, it completely, it puts me in the same place as someone that doesn't give a shit and the thing runs for hours, you know? But I'm actually there trying to sort it, you know?
What's happened, and I can tell you personally, we unregister anytime I get close to any of that infrastructure, because I would rather be down and ride out a couple of minutes of not having, you know, Oracle feeds versus accidentally. I'm a big proponent of not double producing, so I try to always avoid that. But yes, you walk on eggshells now because if you screw up, you have no time to fix it before it's too late.
So one thing to note that this is not minimum requirements. So this downtime is not minimum requirement. This is for scoring points for getting for the bonus points you get for providing the Oracle. And
but it's crucial points.
I get it.
But for most guilds that are actively working in the network, that is not crucial points for being a standby position, for being in a paid position.
Yeah, actually, while I am my guild is not getting points because we had Oracle downtime for some time last period, and we still kind of not get the penalty, but we do not get points for Oracle. But I agree, actually, was having uptime at 95%. And the only thing that it requires right now, I didn't expect that I will say it, I agree with this, because this kind of only thing requires first monitoring, proper monitoring, and second, proper communication. For example, if you have proper monitoring, you will be aware that something is wrong with your Oracle pretty fast. Second point, that if you have some unexpected incident or expected downtime, you will for example, in case of unexpected incident, this is crucial part because it indicates how good you are at monitoring your stuff. So basically, if you will quickly react to this incident, you will not have big downtime for Oracle.
And we had incidents where guilds were not feeding the Oracle for weeks.
Yeah,
and they didn't see, because they simply didn't monitor it. So that's something we want to get behind with. The other thing is that we want to revisit the Oracle code in itself, and we will remove the limitation of, or it's at least right now, the plan is to remove the limitation to registered BPs. So what it's probably coming down to is, now I know you're shaking your head.
You shouldn't do that.
Instead of limiting to registered guilds, it is limited to guilds that received an evaluation by the OIG. So all guilds that are registered with the OIG are able to push, no matter their position, no matter if they're currently registered on chain. As long as the guild is not retired, it can push to the Oracle feed.
Much better solution.
Okay.
I'll also sprinkle in, while you're in that, under that hood, the accuracy of the feeds. Because, like, for instance, I've run into issues where I've gotten rate limited because I pull and feed a lot of prices, especially when you're doing both mainnet and testnet, because it doesn't do them efficiently. I had to rewrite the whole feeding script so it didn't double query the same things. But when it doesn't get a price, it doesn't send it because it doesn't have an updated price. But if you're going to get penalized for not sending it, but not penalized for sending wrong information, I would just rewrite it to always hold a stale value. And at least if it didn't have an updated price, I would still submit something to the chain.
Yeah, there's
Now-
some issues with that we actually have right now. So we have some guilds that just update their price every couple hours and then keep pushing the same price for hours at a time without updating their price. So this is an issue. And we actually do have the rule as specifically says pushing correct feed data. So pushing wrong data would penalize you.
Okay, let's revisit this discussion in a couple of minutes while I walk you through the other changes, since we are short in time. I will walk you through the biggest changes now, and afterwards we can discuss anything in detail. Sorry to interrupt, but the next big change we are planning to do is to decouple the tech evaluation from the product evaluation, which essentially means we are going to have a tech evaluation of your tech ops every 14 days. We are planning to conduct the evaluation on that day until, so the day of Roundtable, I'm still doubtful that we will manage to have a vital discussion about scores on Roundtable, so I doubt it's going to be that date, but for now we have written that in there. There will be no fixed appeal period. We were riddling about the rolling period for the evaluation. Right now we are looking at the past 30 days. It will become 2 weeks, so the actual evaluation period, no more overlap with the previous period, since we don't want to punish incidents twice or 3 times, depending on the timing. And we are going to start the new schedule with version 5.3. So coming to the minor changes, we added a couple of wording changes. So that's probably a lot for you guys to read, a lot of details in there. Give it a read afterwards, and leave us some feedback via Telegram or email or something. We replaced the term SLA with SLR. We added the definition for the grace period. We are changing the CPU benchmark. We are taking to the upper quartile and not the median anymore. So this will tighten the requirements for your CPU benchmark. We are moving away from the fixed percentage for missed rounds per month to from the percentage to a fixed amount of possible rounds you could miss for the point requirements on round availability. And also we are adjusting the uptime percentages and minimum and secondary requirements to align with the new schedule, which is now 14 days, and 95% would be just too tight for the APIs. So going over the ecosystem contributions and the infrastructure services, we have reverted all the new changes planned into this text. As of the timings, we are now defining the rolling period and the exact date of snapshots for the tech evaluations. The initial evaluation requirements changed just slightly, so we could onboard new guilds or potential guilds much easier now. Failing an evaluation is mainly unchanged, just a few wording changes to the SLR and the testbed performance upfront. The rating, the appeal ratings period was missing a crucial paragraph about what you can appeal for and how the special appeal window is handled. Make sure to read this carefully. Also, we are now explaining our contribution rewards and the reward calculation in an example, so that you now know how it is calculated. And the tiebreaker resolution is unchanged. As of the evaluation requirements, the big changes are that we move the round and block availability to 98%, since we are now on the 14-day evaluation period. And we added a new minimum requirement, which is that guilds need to operate a chain API publicly. We have seen that this sometimes fails. Also, now a secondary requirement is that your chain API node must be publicly available with an uptime of 75% at least. we are starting to improve and enhance our validators and monitors to include our new requirements for Chain API. We want to put more focus on Chain API because in the past we had it only as part of history solutions, but we think that there's a great value of a very well serving RPC for the blockchain, especially also for wallets and other wallet providers. The upper quartile on the CPU latency inside the evaluation timeframe has the same penalty as before. Some slight change to the Delphi Oracle routes for the penalty, and also 99% round availability as a secondary requirement with a penalty. Moving on to the technical operations, we have a new addition to our scoring table, which is Chain API with an availability of of greater than 95%, which now grants you 1 point. The round availability now has a fixed amount of no more than 8 rounds missed per month to receive 1 point in this category, or under 2 missed rounds to receive the full score. Going over some wording changes for the useful APIs, how we named it, we now call it quality of life APIs because they improve certain tasks and data handling. And we also have rewritten the paragraph about Price Oracle. Further down, we have the service layer requirements and some conditions for the several APIs we expect you to host. So for the Chain API conditions, we are looking into having some basic calls available and monitored. We're working on that with validators. Also, we will announce new versions that we want to operate network-wide here. This can grant you 1 additional point. Then, as of history API conditions, we refer to the general SLR, which is defined at the bottom, and also some other definitions specifically for history solutions. So we are moving away from Hyperion partial and Hyperion full, but to history partial and history full. The idea is to have more generalized requirements to enable also other software components other than Hyperion to serve a history. The points are unchanged for now, but along the road, we are planning to reduce the points for full history. We can debate that in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, you should mention that we also have adjusted the weight because we're adding an extra point.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there.
Right. So that's a good mention. So we have adjusted the weight inside the scoring table. Is there any scoring table inside this?
No, it's just in the template.
Okay.
No, it's right at the bottom, at the complete bottom of the page. There is a scoring table with the weights.
Right.
So what has happened now is that with the addition of the Chain API, it being decoupled again. So originally Chain API was separate and V1 was separate from Hyperion. And then at some point we bundled everything together into one history service. Now we're decoupling Chain API again. So we're adding an additional point that you can score on the technical operations. But in return, we reduce the multiplier from 13.25 to 12. This means overall you can earn more points in technical in tech, but the weight overall shifts slightly.
So the possible score has increased, but we are also increasing the threshold to 135, I believe. So that
no, the total score is the same.
Yeah, we didn't. We're not adjusting the score threshold for now.
Okay,
we moved away from that with the adjustment of the score of the weight.
Yeah,
because we reduced the weight.
Perfect.
And the total points have not changed. They are the same total point.
I have missed that, but glad you're here. Other than that, the general SLR requirements just list what we expect. So you need to reference the API endpoints in your BPJSON. The declared version requirement shall be satisfied, and also some important notes on uptime, which you should carefully read. So those are the new history API conditions, and we also want to clarify on the quality of life APIs, which includes at the moment atomic assets API, PFS light API, and the special case Roborovsky. There's no standard for IPFS, and light API has like a master branch, so we don't have any versions there for the moment, but we expect a certain version to be run, and we will keep this table up to date, aligned with our expectations. So another important point to talk through is the SLR period, a grace period, which will take effect in 5.3. So we didn't have that previously, but speaking of an incident of a 40-day review period, and we had an incident lasting approximately 24 hours. At the starting point, is a public acknowledgement of the incident, and the grace period is until the patch is released, which typically is announced on Telegram. And then we are adding a full 24 hours as a bonus for you guys to work on resolving the issues.
In this example, because patching can take longer.
Yeah, so, okay. Patching can take longer, so we would adjust that case by case. But in this example, for a 14-day period with 24 hours of grace period plus 24 hours of workload, you would receive a 14.2% uptime bump, so that you don't suffer from network product incidents.
So, but we're doing it the other way around. We reduce the threshold. So instead of 95%, you will only have to score 80.08.
Sure.
It's easier than just adding the points on everybody. There's too much manual labor that can result in issues. And just to be clear, while we applied this in the past already, so we already did this in the past. We just didn't have it defined in the guidelines. We also did it on the last tech evaluation right now. So we just didn't have it in the guidelines. So now we added it properly to the guidelines.
So I believe there's a lot more in here for you to read. Take a careful read, please, after the call.
There's one more thing I just needed to ask you. You know, the backups, it's full of question marks. Was there any agreement on what was expected of the backups, snapshots, blocks, logs, etc.?
That's also another change we started working on. We didn't finalize yet, but according to our roundtable, I think 2 weeks ago, where we talked through snapshots and backups, we came up with this table, which is still not final. So it's yellow. We need to work that out still. But we included now chain database snapshots and assigned a score to it. Probably still unsure how this will work out, but this is our latest draft to the snapshots.
So is this not taken into account for this next period, or should we still comment on it, or what should we do?
Please comment on it.
Where is the place to comment that makes it easy to comment on? Because I can't comment in the form.
Should there be up on GitHub a discussion for it?
I think I actually enabled commenting on the form. Maybe it got disabled again when we were changing the restrictions. But yeah, ideally just do it on GitHub, I guess. So
okay, I will host.
You should probably host a discussion on GitHub for this. Yes.
On a side note for that same topic, when/if do we expect these guidelines to be on GitHub with the history and everything?
So shall we host the whole guidelines in a discussion so you can comment on it, or shall we
no, like always have the guidelines on where everything else is? That's what I'm...
Yeah, so GitHub lacks just some features when it comes to formatting text. So we have no nice tables and we have no checkboxes and stuff. So that makes it a little hard for us to visualize all the changes
The guidelines are always public and Notion.
So, yeah, I mean, besides
we can link the guidelines in GitHub and then start the discussion from there, and then we can see how we can put the entire guidelines into GitHub. I think that's for now the easiest solution.
Do you want a breakdown of 5 topics as discussions, like the main changes we are doing, or do you want a whole document as a discussion?
I would just do the whole document and then start a discussion on the document, and then we can discuss everything. I think I don't expect too many people to participate in this, unfortunately. So
sure. And I think I'm concluding the guidelines right now. So now it's your time to speak up to especially the 14 days evaluation period and the 14 days rolling period. If you guys have any feedback.
I have a question with relation to this. Isn't this going to put much more pressure to you guys?
Yes and no.
On the one side, yes, but on the other side, it's going to also relieve you guys from having one incident and having that punished in 2 consecutive evaluations. So
I'm just saying, will you have enough amount of time to actually properly evaluate every 14 days?
By now we have multiple validation tools, and with the open appeal period, or rather no appeal period, so that we can apply fixes down the line if something goes wrong. It's essentially we can manage to do the entire tech evaluation in 1 day. Mm-hmm. So it should work out. So it's essentially not that bad. It's 1 day every 2 weeks. And we should be able to manage that, at least for now, with the current amount of guilds we have.
OIG POV it's very stressful. So I can tell you, we had the evaluation last week, and we needed to manage it in 1 day. And if you happen to have something in the family on that day, it's really hard. Yeah.
On weekends, it's never easy. So, and we're also exploring to build some tools. I've been annoying some of you. Well, we're not in the call about APIs to your testing services. So we're trying also to build our own tools to help to speed up the process, the evaluation process. But yeah, it's a bit more of work, but I think it's worth it.
Definitely.
Any more feedback, guys? Anything? History, APIs?
I give you all sorts of opinions, but I'll hold them.
Same.
I kind of need some time to process this because that's a lot of changes.
Yeah, I think the most important change is that we don't have the full evaluation anymore. We now have 2 separate evaluations, and one is only ecosystem contributions, and one is only infrastructure. And this should ease the reporting also a bit, because you essentially don't have to report. So we had many guilds that kept reporting tech stuff, like their uptime percentages and all that shit that we don't need in the reporting. So we're probably also adding a paragraph to what is supposed to be in the submission.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you have a guideline document for this is how we would like to see the default reporting? And
there is a template for it on GitHub, isn't there?
So right now, when you open an issue, we have the template with the 5 questions, but I wouldn't lie, we can rework it to fit a little bit more. But also the quality of submissions have a wide range. So
yes, very wide.
In some cases, guilds are are reporting back like 3 sentences in each category. In other cases, we can see that guilds have set up a nice template for themselves with every product 1, product 2, product 3, tech incidents and stuff like that. So
I can tell you that historically across most chains, VPs are not the greatest self-promoters.
No, the problem is
do our thing.
Yeah, the problem is that the biggest issue is guilds that essentially overpromote, that keep reporting the same information for like 2 years in every report. And then they smack us with like a 6-page report, and most of it is information we already got multiple times. So
just like talking to my marketing department. But the point is that, I mean, that's kind of what that is that it. But yeah, you got to find a balance between. But yeah, some suggestions, because I know whatever you've told us to include, we try to include, and I give you a couple of sentences. Yeah, it was a dumpster fire this month. Try again next month.
Yeah, what I wanted originally was to have essentially 1 page where the guild has their portfolio, and then they would just submit updates to this page, so that we only use and look at the diff to what has been added in this submission. And I think instead of submitting a full page, a full report every time, we would just look at the update, just at the diff, so we can see this has changed. So maybe we can revisit that.
Do you guys have any guilds that do a good job that you can put up as an example for other guilds to look at how they report and take some inspiration?
Sure. Taco, for example, is having pretty nice reports. Taco Wax.
There's like 2-3 that do a very, very good job of reporting, but unfortunately, I can't really tell from the top of my head.
So, talking of expectations or wishes, I like the idea of having only the update, but in some sort of an issue on the repository. That would satisfy me the most. So whenever you have progress on your product or your ecosystem contribution, you should file an issue and report to us what update this particular product received. And that's what we then should be looking at and update the score. So that would be my preferable way of doing it. But yeah, the submission template needs a slight rework.
Yeah, and we need submission guidelines. So yeah, I'm probably going to write another paragraph on that.
Well, that dramatically changes things. I mean, we've seen not just with our guild, the way it gets presented effectively can dramatically change what the opinion of something is, you know, because you got to talk through it almost as opposed to writing a dissertation, because y'all don't want dissertations. Rightfully so.
Okay. Anything else you want to discuss about the current guidelines? I guess we all need more time to read through it. So there's a roundtable in 2 weeks again, and let's prepare for the next one also. All right, let's conclude the official recording and head over to the open forum. So stop the recording, please.